In the United States, over the last decade, 60,000 pedestrians died under the wheels of an automobile. 1 million pedestrians were injured. Join us for the next half hour as we take a look at Perils for Pedestrians.
On this episode, we visit the Cooper Institute for Aerobics Research to learn the health benefits of walking. Then we take a look at pedestrian initiatives in Nashville, Tennessee. Asheville, North Carolina is developing a pedestrian thoroughfare plan. An urban trail attracts pedestrians to downtown Asheville. And finally, we head down to Austin, Texas for the second annual Partners for Smart Growth Conference. Stay tuned. We're in Dallas, Texas, talking with Steve Blair, who's Director of Research at the Cooper Institute for Aerobics Research. What is the Cooper Institute?
We're a nonprofit research and education foundation. We're mainly interested in studying the effect of physical activity, or more appropriately, lack of physical activity, on health and function. But we're also interested in other aspects of lifestyle and other aspects of clinical medicine that relate to health and longevity.
And what is the effect of lack of activity on health?
It's bad for you. Physical inactivity is one of the major public health problems in the United States and was so designated by the Surgeon General's report on physical activity and health that was released in 1996. Physical inactivity has numerous deleterious health effects. It increases the risk for premature mortality, increases the risk for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, stroke, some cancers, and maybe even more importantly, as you move on into the later years of life, the sedentary and unfit people are those who lose function, lose their independence, may have to be institutionalized because they can no longer take care of themselves. It's bad for you.
Okay, you've convinced me, but what do I have to do? I don't want to work, you have to go down to the gym every day. What does it take to stay healthy?
There's good news. There are recent physical activity recommendations from the leading medical, scientific, public health organizations in the United States and around the world. But recent reports from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the American College of Sports Medicine, the National Institutes of Health, the American Heart Association, the Surgeon General's Office, the World Health Organization, I could go on and on. But the consensus view is that 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity provides most of the health benefits that we know about. And moderate intensity activity is, I think, best described as simply brisk walking. And then the second piece of good news is you don't even have to do it all at one time. You can accumulate this 30 minutes over the course of the day. So 3 10-minute walks will get you a lot of health benefit. Now, people say, I'm too busy, I can't go to the gym, I can't exercise, and indeed that is a deterrent for many people. But who is so busy they can't fit in a few minutes of walking morning, afternoon, evening with family, friends, co-workers, and the like? 3 10-minute walks buys you an awful lot of health and function.
You have something you call the toxic environment. Well, what is that?
Yes, I think we've been very busy in industrialized countries, especially since World War II, in this electronic, telecommunications, computer-driven environment that we find ourselves, where we're just engineering activity right out of existence. We use electrical power, or more typically that comes actually from oil supplies that are pumped up from under the ground, so we could say we're substituting the energy from dead dinosaurs, where the oil comes from, for human energy expenditure. Just think about the countless ways in which we substitute something like electrical power to open the door for us to walk through, or to lower the windows in our car. In my car, you don't even have to hold the button down. It's an automatic. You just push it and the window goes down. And you can multiply that by thousands and thousands of things. Self-propelled vacuum cleaners, remote changers, and the like. We've engineered activity, not totally out of existence, but declining energy expenditure of several hundred kilocalories a day in industrialized societies, just from these labor-saving devices. So we've made ourselves a toxic environment in terms of producing inactivity, making it less convenient to be active and more likely to lead to inactivity. And it's bad for us.
And you're also president of the National Coalition for Promoting Physical Activity. What is that group?
Yes, that's a group that's a little more than 3 years old. There are more than 100 different scientific, public health, voluntary health organizations that are part of the National Coalition. And our task is to take on this public health problem of physical inactivity. We will be developing an implementation plan to achieve the national health objectives for the year 2010, which are currently being developed by the U.S. Public Health Service. We've had many coordinated national campaigns for cholesterol lowering, for treating high blood pressure, for trying to get people to stop smoking or young people not to start. We've never really had a well-funded, well-developed national program to promote physical activity, and that is what the coalition intends to take on over the next decade.
What does all this have to do with sidewalks?
Well, if you have no sidewalks, as we do not have in the front of this building along a very busy 6-lane street, then if you want to go even a short distance, you either have to walk in the mud, walk in the street and brave that traffic, or what most people do, of course, jump in their car and go down the street 300 or 400 yards just to go to the supermarket or to go to dinner or what have you. It's hazardous to walk. It's hazardous to cycle in many cities in our country. We need to change that. We need to make the environment more friendly. And this has numerous benefits. First of all, the health benefits that I'm interested in, if people would get this 30 minutes of walking each day. There are also environmental and economic benefits. You know, there was a report just last month from the International Technology Assessment Center that reckoned that in the U.S., the true cost of a gallon of gasoline is somewhere between $5 and $15. And that comes from their environmental problems, the cost for our military to defend our oil supplies, as well as all of what we customarily think about that goes into a gallon of gas. $5 to $15. It's a huge cost, and we don't really pay it directly, so we don't realize how much it's costing us. Just think of what we could do with billions and billions of dollars to improve the environment, improve the health, improve the social structure for the well-being of millions and tens of millions of people, if we had more people walking, cycling just for short errands.
We're in Nashville, Tennessee, talking with David Kleinfelter, who's a member of the Metropolitan Council. What's been happening for pedestrians here in the Nashville area?
Unfortunately, up until recently, not a whole lot, John. But about 2 years ago, the Nashville Metropolitan Council put together a Transportation and Pedestrian Safety Task Force. We called it the TAPS Task Force. And in August of last year, or August of this year actually, 1998, we put together a final report. In that final report, we made a series of recommendations and looked at things that Nashville can do better. I've been lucky to attend a bunch of national conferences. The Pro Bike, Pro Walk this year in Santa Barbara, and the year before that, the Pedestrian Conference in Washington, and took what I learned from those conferences and brought it back here to Nashville, and hopefully we'll make some headway here in the near future.
What sort of things were in the final report?
The final report noted that we have a big problem in Nashville with a continuous sidewalk network. We don't have one. There are places where there are sidewalks. Here in Nashville, sidewalks are built by the city, the developers up until recently didn't have to build sidewalks. Our brand new zoning code does require that. And so we have a problem with having a discontinuous sidewalk network. And of course the report said that we ought to fix that. We also recommended a bunch of systemic changes in the government, calling for a pedestrian and bicycle coordinator in the government like a lot of cities have. We also called for just an advisory committee at this point to advise the Department of Public Works on these issues so that we don't make some of the mistakes we've made in the past.
And what's the next step then? How do those recommendations get put into action?
Well, they have to be funded. And one of the first things that I think the mayor here will agree to, we have a very strong mayor form of government in Nashville, and I think he'll agree to the bicycle pedestrian coordinator. I also hope that we can show ways that money can be got, at least a portion of it, from the federal government. So I think that'll at least sweeten the pot somewhat. what we're also trying to do, other than just on a broad citywide basis, is right here in what's called the Green Hills part of Nashville, where I happen to represent in council. We're working on some more fine-tuned plans to do things like, again, to do a pedestrian network making our sidewalks better, but also making between buildings, instead of just using the sidewalks, using the rights of way that people could grant on the rear portions of their properties to do a continuous pedestrian network in this area.
So instead of having to walk all the way around a long block, you could, the old "you can't get there from here"
Right.
wouldn't be true anymore.
In this area, people have, as they have in many areas, segregated their parking areas and said, this is ours. Unless you're in our store, we don't want you parking here. And what we're encouraging and hopefully going to put together for a plan for this particular area is a series of recommendations that will include shared parking and breaking down the literal barriers between parking lots. Some of them are chain link fences, some of them are concrete retainer walls. But we want to break those down and then make it so that in addition to sidewalks, if you're in the rear portion of a property, you can go this way to a bookstore that's just across the way, but right now you would have to walk all the way out to the street, all the way around, and it'd take a lot longer unless if we had a pedestrian pathway that would be very much more convenient, and I think people would do it.
What's happening in terms of advocacy in the city of Nashville?
Well, there hadn't been anything until just recently. This is an exciting time in Nashville. We've done a lot wrong for a long time, but in conjunction with or right after the task force, I got together a group of people. For a while, we're calling ourselves Walk Nashville. We now are Walk Bike Nashville. The group we have a board of directors, about 25 people. We have representatives of our Greenways Commission and myself. The person who's the president of this group, named Kibby Clayton, was formerly active in the running group here in Nashville. But this is the first group that's done any advocacy for walking and bicycling. And I have to admit, at this point, we haven't done any advocacy yet. We've tried to do the formal putting together the group the right way to make sure we survive as a group. One of the things, we have 2 or 3 things we're looking at for really soon to come advocacy. A bridge is being built in a part of town called Bellevue that has no sidewalks on it. It's right between a residential area and a commercial area, and we think that's absurd. It creates a barrier between those 2 areas that shouldn't exist. Secondly, there's a road called West End that is in the process. The Public Works Department wants to widen it from 4 lanes to at least 6 lanes with 2 turn lanes and at least 8 or so lanes at the intersections, and that's, of course, antithetical to what we hope to have done for pedestrians.
How does Nashville compare with the rest of Tennessee or with the state government? What else is going on in the state?
Nashville lags behind in Tennessee, I'm afraid. The iced money over the past 6 years in some cities has been put to very good use. Chattanooga, Tennessee has a wonderful pedestrian feel to its downtown anyway. I haven't been in the neighborhoods that much. Knoxville has done a good job of adding useful multi-use paths in the city in addition to some nice greenways. They have a very good pedestrian feel in their downtown. Nashville, on the other hand, we used $50 million or so iced dollars in Nashville to help build a bicentennial mall, which is an outdoor patterned on the mall in Washington. A wonderful facility and very friendly to pedestrians, but not part of any transportation network. And once we use that money here, we weren't able to get significant enhancement funds or any other of those type of funds from the Department of Transportation, which brings me to the Department of Transportation. Unfortunately, I often refer to our department here as the Department of Paving. That is their significant and only interest as far as it can be told. The commissioner, Mr. Saltzman, is a former paver. It's my understanding, frankly, that his wife still owns the paving company that he owns, so they still have an interest in nothing but paving asphalt. Tennessee is unfortunately one of the states that does not have a single professional full-time employed dealing with bicycle and pedestrian issues. I know a lot of states even have a department of alternate transportation or bicycle and pedestrian. We have a gentleman who had a job before in the Department of Transportation. He was told wear the hat that says bicycle pedestrian coordinator on it. I understand him to be a very nice gentleman, but he has no time to work on the issue, and I'm afraid it shows across the state.
We're in Asheville, North Carolina, talking with Suzanne Malloy, who's Assistant Director of the Public Works Department. Asheville's taken a renewed interest in pedestrians in recent years. How'd that all get started?
In recent years, I would actually put it back a little bit further than that. There has been a bicycle and pedestrian task force that's been active in the area since probably the late 80s. And in the mid-90s, the city council at that time directed staff to put together something called a pedestrian awareness and community evaluation team. And that team worked with neighborhood organizations to determine where pedestrian linkages were needed and what type of pedestrian hazards might exist and how to promote pedestrian issues and also make recommendations on how to implement programs to make them better. Since that time, there's been a lot of interest from the community in walkable communities, from some local organizations and local citizens who have promoted walkable communities and conferences. And in the last couple of years, we have taken a lot of that information and we've worked on putting together a pedestrian plan for the city of Asheville. Our department has, spearheaded that along with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Task Force. So there's a lot of interest, and we're hoping to take that interest and put it into a document that actually is something that we can implement.
What sort of things go into a pedestrian plan?
Well, what our department has decided to put into this plan is issues like where we need to have critical linkages in our neighborhoods. We're not looking at putting sidewalks on every single road and linkages, but where we critically need to have them so people can get to, shopping centers or schools or churches and things like that. We're also looking where there's currently pedestrian hazards, such as a lack of ADA ramps or poles obstructing the sidewalks. We're looking at issues where we might need to have pedestrian crossings. We're going to be recommending things to City Council, such as how to fund these sidewalks or pedestrian linkages, which also can be off-road greenways and things like that, and recommendations on how we may be coordinating it better in the city, recommendations on how to improve maybe our engineering standards or our planning and development ordinance such that these issues will be looked at in all types of development.
What's been the process for this, getting public input and then putting everything together?
The process has actually been rather long and drawn out. In 1995 and 96, there was a very involved group of people working with neighborhood organizations. The city and city council members at that time actually hosted meetings where the neighborhoods came in, they handed them maps, and they said, go out and tell us where you need to have linkages and tell us where there's problems. Those maps and those meetings were put together over about a year and a half. From that time point, we then took everything that was put together and we put together a pedestrian plan. At this point in time, we've had limited public involvement with the plan because what we're trying to do is to take everything that has been put together and then take it back out to the public. What we plan on doing is this January, we will take a second draft to the public and then host public meetings and try and get more community input at that time. So far, we pretty much have been getting comment just from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Task Force and literally looking at logs and records of phone calls of people calling and saying we've got a problem here. So a lot of it really falls into place upon the information that the public has been giving us. But we'll go back out to the public again and hopefully get some more comment that will help increase the scope of the plan and also make it a little bit stronger.
And after that next round of comment then, do you get to the final plan?
Well, after the next round of comment, we're going to go to City Council this January, late January, early February. Then we'll have probably about 2 months of an open time frame for people to comment and maybe host some meetings. We will then go back to City Council and have the plan adopted. And hopefully within that adoption there will be some action steps that they will also be endorsing that will help us move towards working on some of the pedestrian issues in the city.
And is this a long-term task then to accomplish all the things in the plan?
Absolutely, it's a long-term. I don't think we've even identified how long-term the project will take. We've already identified over $36 million of pedestrian needs in Asheville. That's a huge chunk of change, and there's a lot of priorities that City Council has. We've also just recently adopted a master greenway plan, and a master's park plan, which I've identified. Like I think one of them is $64 million. So there's a lot of issues they'll be looking at. Our approach will be to probably be looking at the next 5 years on how to fund some of the smaller projects and how to look at getting these things incorporated into the development ordinance so that the developers will also participate in building of sidewalks. We'll also be promoting special assessments. So we don't have a plan on knowing that, well, in the year 2010 we're going to be done with it because there's so many things right now that we've got to look at and prioritize overall.
We're in Asheville, North Carolina, talking with Ho-Jin Welker, who's the Urban Trails Coordinator with the Public Works Department. What is the Urban Trail?
Well, it's something we're very proud of in Asheville. It's a 1.6-mile hike through downtown Asheville that displays through art and some narrative that people have developed of the history, the architectural history, and the people history of the city.
How did this get started?
It was started probably in the late 1980s when they were talking about a renaissance of the whole downtown. It was a way to get people in the downtown, and it was a way for people who wanted to leave a legacy to the city, because this is a trail that's funded entirely with private money. It's the gifts of all the wonderful donors of the city that's made this really beautiful thing possible.
And how does this private-public partnership work then?
Well, I coordinate the trail, and I'm a city employee, but it's private donations. People will leave like memorials to the trail, or we are hoping to do a piece of the trail that will enable various peoples to leave part of it. We've got a major fundraising going on right now to fund what will be our biggest work. It's a memorial to the mountain dancers, which was a very important part of our culture, and that's requiring a lot of people to donate.
What is a trail like this? What does it do for the city?
Well, we think it brings a lot of people to the city. We had a walk into history event last fall, and I can't tell you how many people came up and said, this is the first time we've come back to downtown Asheville, and that's what we wanted to see. We wanted a way to get people back into the downtown, to shop in the downtown, and to appreciate just how beautiful our downtown is.
So how close are you to being finished with it?
It was originally designed with 30 stations around this 1.6 miles. We've got 24 that have something in place. A few of those were enhancing the art, and we hope in another 2 years to have it completed.
We're talking with Michael Pavlukevich, who's Director of Environmental Land Use Policy with the Urban Land Institute.
Hi.
What is the Urban Land Institute?
Urban Land Institute is a research and education organization. It's a nonprofit. We're in Washington, D.C. We are member-oriented. We have about 14 or 15,000 members across the country and around the world who are interested in real estate and development issues. So over the years, we've been doing research and holding conferences and meetings and writing books about all different aspects of development and real estate. And today we're interested in smart growth.
Which is my next question. We're here down in Austin, Texas. What has been going on this week?
Well, we've been holding the National Partners for Smart Growth Conference, where people have come. We've had about 850, 900 people from around the country and many from around Central Texas here to look into alternative patterns of development. A lot of us feel that the patterns of development over the past 50 years have been harmful to the environment, have caused traffic congestion and take time from people's lives and families, and that there might be better ways for growth that we know is going to come to happen in the community. And so we're trying to talk about being intelligent about growth. That's why we call it smart growth, thinking about how we want growth to happen and not just letting it happen to us.
This is your second annual Partners in Smart Growth Conference. What's happened between last year and this year?
Very good. Last year was really the first conference, and we didn't know what to expect. And it turned out there was a lot of enthusiasm that grew out of it. And what happened was we had an interesting mix of people at that meeting. There were, of course, developers, because that's who a lot of our people that we communicate with, people in the development and in the real estate and land use industry, they came to the meeting. But also because of our partnership with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, we also got a lot of environmentalists and public sector people. And they got, for the first time, to sit down and talk about the issue in a kind of a rational environment and not with anger and hostility about a project or whatever. What was really exciting is they found out they had a lot in common and a lot of things they thought they could share and do together. So many of these groups who came from 40 different states around the country went home and started doing smart growth stuff together. And a conspicuous example is the city of Austin, Texas, who had a number of representatives at that meeting, and they got excited about what they heard, and they came back here to Austin, and the mayor started implementing smart growth policies. And then they said, we like this so much, we really want to have that conference here next year. And so they talked to us and cajoled us and bribed us, and we finally said, okay, we'll do it in Austin. And it's working out really well.
What would be the connection between smart growth and new urbanism and walkable communities? How do all these fit together?
Very good. Well, smart growth is kind of a process, all right? And smart growth is something that happens locally. You don't have, it's not like some kind of a cookbook or a pill. You have to work in your community to identify, because each community has its own culture, its own business environment, its own politics, its own environment, unique aspects of the environment. So there are certain things that each community has to address on its own. Walkable communities, new urbanism, brownfields development, infield development, these are tools, things that you can do, practices that you can use in the process of doing your process of smart growth. Does that answer your question?
So where do you go from here? What's the future for smart growth?
Well, we're hoping, we have a couple of, first of all, the future is collaboration. We've been through this growth, no growth argument, and people picketing and anger, and we don't want any more growth. We want to grow everything, both extremes. And what we're trying to get people to do is work together to find a common vision of what growth ought to be, and have it work out so that the environment gets preserved, we have a good, healthy economy, and communities that work. And that's why you have to be smart and to think that through to make that happen. And our view is we can preserve the environment, developers can make money, we can have a healthy economy, lovely communities that are fun to live in. And it's a very positive thing. We want to have prosperity, and we want to use growth as an opportunity to make our communities better. So, it's kind of an idealistic vision, but I think that we've been seeing the extremes come in, to join the mainstream, because there's so many opportunities here in this kind of an engagement, and so there's a lot of interest in people. I think a lot of people are beginning to see the advantages of partnering in this kind of a setting.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.